Hi everyone, and thank you for being here this evening. I'm Mohamed Senhaji. I'm in charge of digital innovation acceleration within NG. Today, I'll be very pleased to introduce and ask questions to our panelists for this new edition of Powered by AI, held by the NG and MIT Club de France. But before starting our panel, I'll ask Claire to introduce YPN program and YPN network, because we are holding and we are doing this session with YPN. Claire?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. And I'm Claire Loire, part of Young Professional Network. YPN is a community to connect young professionals at NG, to share ideas, foster innovation, and better understand the vision of NG. Each year we organize an event, Creative Lab for Young Professionals. And it's in this partenariat that we are welcoming Powered by AI session.
It's okay. Thank you very much, Claire, and very happy to be part of this YPN program. Mihir is here. So we can wait a little bit for him to take place. And so to introduce a little bit the session today, we will, of course, talk about AI and people and how it's shifting the way we are interacting with machines today, and how the adoption of these new AIs or new machines are developing a new way of trust and planning a new or designing a new future of work. So before starting and going further, maybe I let Mihir finish the introduction and then give the floor to Ines and Florent to introduce themselves and talk about what they're doing in their current activities.
Thank you, Mohamed. Hello to our speakers, Florian and Ines, and thank you to everyone. Sorry for the late arrival. It's one of those days when things don't always go as planned, but I'm glad I'm here. And thanks for being here as well, online and physically here. So we have an amazing roster of speakers today. I'm really glad to welcome Ines and Florian. We discussed a bit at Adopt AI that took place last week at the Grand Palais on new topics surrounding the intersection between machines and humans. And the short discussions we had led to organizing this session, because I felt that our speakers had good insight on both work that has been done in the past and how their solutions are being implemented in industry, and what their vision is for the future of human-AI interactions. So maybe a quick word of introduction from both of you, and then we can kick off.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ines Bespes. I'm the founder of CDEX. CDEX is an AI assistant that is specialized in speech to text. So basically, we do transcriptions, we do summaries, and then we have a RAG where you can find every information within the system.
And I'm Florian. I'm the co-founder of Dataiku. Dataiku is a collaborative platform enabling enterprise to build AI solutions. We essentially enable teams that usually comprise a mix of data scientists and people in the business to build AI use cases on top of their structured or unstructured data.
And we can start.
So let's start. First question. We see the movement today that goes from the chatbots and what OpenAI launched 3 years ago now. And we're moving step by step to AIs and machines that are acting. From your perspective, Ines, what's moving today from this chatbot interaction with the machine to agents that are taking actions in a organization, in processes within an organization?
So from my own perspective, I see that we went from being passive to being proactive. So before, what we do is just interact and ask for an output with a system. So we ask a question, and then it searches for an information, and then it can analyze an information for us. Today, it can anticipate a need. So for example, if we ask a question, not only we receive an answer, but we receive a request to, for example, I don't know, prepare an email or draft something, and even go more into the action of embedding it within the system that we're using right now. So for example, I'm using Microsoft. The system knows that it's Microsoft, and it can send an email directly from Outlook. So right now, we're at the beginning of agentic. So it's still a little bit blurry of what we can concretely do and what is still a utopia for us. But what we can concretely do is prepare actions. What still is at least a utopia for us is the fact that we embed it perfectly within the system, so then it's frictionless for the user, so that it doesn't even anticipate or connect anything, and that any user today can use it and just create any action whatsoever. But obviously this depends on every use cases that we have in the company.
So Florian, you've long argued that chatbot was maybe the first entry point to this new generation of AI interaction. But if we pull the thread, we go towards whole process automation. How do you think about that journey from a user's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I'm operating with the mindset that indeed there will be down the line way more automation through agents, meaning automation is not new, you will just be able to automate more things. So I take that for granted. And then the next step is, what do we do as humans? Assuming that more and more things, such as reading your emails in order to produce a report to your boss, it's kind of like automated, or it takes you 10 seconds instead of like 20 minutes. And then the logic is that you're spending more and more time as a human to understand what's working versus not, to exercise your judgment, to put style into the thing, to know what's good versus not, and express that to the machine, to assess where are the errors in the system versus not, if it's going in the right direction, if it's actually learning. You probably do that as a human because you actually are still a knowledge expert, and you are still accountable for something as a human. And so in that world, the main UX for human is probably not the chatbot, in the sense that what's important for you as a human when you exercise this ability to have a judgment is to be able to very efficiently understand the machine. What it has done through the last few days of automation, what worked versus not, to use your eyes and look at all of this data and so forth. And you probably don't do that just by asking the machine, were you okay? Have you done a good job? Because the machine will say yes, so it's not very useful. So you will actually have more and more the need to have those efficient ways to inspect what has been done by the machine. And that's maybe an underestimated need for the future, because that's where we should spend our time, on TikTok too, I guess.
To react what you're saying, Florian, does it mean that we will move from doers to managers of things doing, or agents doing things?
I think we already do that quite a bit, meaning compared to decades ago, a lot of people sitting in office are actually more manager of processes compared to what they were before. They may be doing that in Excel today, but like it will be more and more on that. But indeed, there is a role that will be about managing the machine, like giving feedback and so forth. How you do it exactly is TBD, because we are so early in the process that we haven't really defined what work will be.
I think we'll also have two different types of people, the makers and the managers as well, because we would have the makers that would be the brain behind how do we construct to be, to evolve with AI and how it can actually fit to a real need. But then on the other side, you will have the people that are not interacting at all with AI because it's still manual work, and we will still have manual work. So I think there will be a gap between the workers that would just still do what they're doing today, but just as at an enhanced phase, without having a large component of AI disrupting what they do today. And then you will have the managers and the makers just constantly trying to innovate and improve their not only efficiency but also the way they think, the way they improve, the way they share the knowledge. So I think this is we're in the industry as well, so the industrial sector and the energy sector, and I'm sure there are a lot of manual work as well that is still very far from how we're using AI in the day-to-day job that we're seeing today. And maybe also their work is going to change in a different way and not totally in phase with what we're seeing with managers and makers.
Yeah, to your point, in the industrial sector, we're seeing embedded AI in drones and robots that do, for example, maintenance, inspections, instead of teams going out on the field. So we're seeing a shift also in those kinds of profiles. One thing that I've sort of argued for is when data science or programming students ask me, what's the future of their field, is the fact that I think there's a convergence in terms of individual profiles on domain knowledge and problem-solving capacities. So by domain knowledge, what I mean is that you need to know what you're applying your skills towards, in the sense that AI agents are now helping write code, so solve problems, but you need to be able to identify the problem you need to solve and describe it in a way that is precise enough that makes sense, and also being able to evaluate the output of the model. So I don't know if so that's one of the use cases in terms of what's evolving and the human machine interactions. Development is one. We've seen a big peak of usage, and then it sort of plateaued a bit and went down in terms of percentage of downloads and usage of tools like Lovable and Copilot, etc. What's your feeling on that in your companies? Do you use do you ask your teams to use AI code development?
I do, but I also see that there are nuances between that. Is that I don't force them to use any specific tools. I ask them to explore, to test, and also to see what their input, how they can value their time as well. In either trying to use a platform like Lovable, for example, we tried it many times, but it doesn't really fit into our processes today. We found also a few flaws and how we can create with Lovable. So we decided to use other tools, and obviously they use GitHub Copilot and they use other type of coding tool. But I feel that today is an important time to really do our benchmark, but also try to see how the value of each engineer, each developer can not only improve, but like we said right now with just managing the tool, how they can manage it at their best, the tool with the knowledge they have, and how they can also improve as a developer today. So like we said 10 times, productivity is important, but not only productivity, but quality. How can we improve the quality, not just using any tools? So like I said, we had a peak. We saw many different tools. We spent a lot of time doing benchmarks. And then from that benchmark, we realized that some tools can get us a bit more time, but they don't make our platform better. They don't increase specific value. And the value that we manage to get as a developer is mostly, how do you say, the quality of, for example, embedding our code into different workflows as well, and to integrating, for example, like I said earlier, in a system where it's connected with every single system from our clients. And with that, we didn't need to have a specific tool for that. We needed specific knowledge in a specific environment. Like, for example, Microsoft, we needed specific developers for that. And we didn't find any tool that could replace that knowledge specifically. So I think it depends on which component and which type of developing feature that we need to improve. Of course, I think the job of a developer is going to evolve day after day, years after years, and I'm sure in the next years that are going to come, we're going to see the education change completely in that sense.
And Florian, I'm curious about how you see it in-house, developing that Dataiku platform, but also for the users of the platform, if those are features that you're pushing for.
Yeah, meaning for sure we've seen actually for a couple of years the development of the growth of citizen development or citizen data science, citizen analytics, citizen AI. The fact that you've got people in the business becoming owner of a process or a workflow or an app and building it by themselves. For instance, we've got a couple of customers that are large manufacturer who have process engineers or quality technicians on the factory floor, meaning in each factory, that are building their own analytics, their own app, their own way to adapt the process or the quality control or some aspect of the decision making of their industrial process per the particular supplier or batch they've got in the factory, and so integrate data on their own and like rebuild their models and so forth. And why? Because they've got the context. They understand the data. You can't actually, if you've got dozens of factories throughout Europe and the world, you can't really have a central data scientist build every variant of every data set and be there when like there is a new supplier in Poland that want to change this and that, and how do you actually re-optimize the thing? You want to have adaptability on the field. And I think this citizen aspect is more and more an important way for organization to adopt AI in a practical manner. The way I think about it, or the mental model I have myself for that, which to some extent also applies to Dataiku as a company, is that in every company you've got a couple of percent, maybe 3 to 15% of the company, which are people that deeply understand either the process or the data of the company, or what good looks like, what optimizing means, what are the type of trade-off you can run at the company. It's not 100% of your company, but you've got like this portion of the company, which are not necessarily manager actually, just people knowing the business, that understand a lot the business context. And it applies to manufacturer, it applies to clinical trial in pharma, it applies to finance, of course. And those people are key for the organization to transform itself. Because building relevant application without their contribution, without them owning it, has two issues. First, you lose the business context you need. And so the only other way to do it is either to have them write a spec and hope that IT can understand it, or bring consultants in, which is not great. And second, adoption. The more you go toward automation of work, the more you need people buy-in order to actually accept the new application. And if the person that built the application, or if the person contributed to the application are not people like them, they will not actually accept the new application. There is a dimension of adoption of the application, which is more and more important, because what we're talking about is automating piece by piece various processes in the enterprise, and you need to be relevant to do that.
Let me just go back to a question, or to what Ines said about the process, by saying that these new tools are not fitting in our process. Either in your own teams, organizations, or with the organization you're working with, did you see how this AI or the future agentic AI are changing processes? Have you real feedbacks on processes that completely changed because we're introducing AI within them?
100% for our clients. That's like we see a before and after that is quite clear. The only problem is before the knowledge was really scattered. So we had the knowledge that was, a bit everywhere in the emails and Microsoft and whatever we said with a colleague once or in the notebook. Right now we can capture all the data in one point for us, especially in the speech to text, because that's where we're working on. So we're capturing all the conversations that we have, any type of conversations, physical, face-to-face conversation, video call, calling, anything. We capture it. It's live data that is just, automatically updated every single second. So then we have a live knowledge management board that is just constantly this. Then we clear that data and make sure that is structured and usable for a specific use case. And for example, if I just go with an HR, for example, within a company, and HR is going to make a lot of meetings with a potential candidate. They're going to interact with, 100 candidates for one big position as a manager. For that, first of all, they're going to call a number of candidates for like 5 to 10 minutes. Then they're going to have a recap, and then out of those 100 candidates, this person is going to meet probably 30 of them. Out of those 30, this HR is going to take 1 hour to just have a conversation with them with video call or face-to-face, and then we capture this data. We put it in a structured note, and then it can be sent to every single manager that is within the process. This manager can ask different questions, find the different data that probably the HR didn't capture at that point, and then after that, we will be able to take this in the process, and then once the person is onboarded, we have every single conversation of the onboarding. The manager, once they get also the interview at the last process, they have all the information already structured. They don't need to go back to the HR, ask the same questions at the same interview. And then at the end, when the candidate is selected, they can have an extremely personalized notebook with, all the things that, has been discussed within the interview, and this without any frictions, without going back and forth, without having the data everywhere and not knowing about this. And then once this candidate does 10 years of career, and then they leave, they worked with a company for 10 years. They know so many things about the company. They worked on so many different projects. They realized so many years of work. We managed to capture every single of this data all along. Obviously, we're not at 10 years yet, but we can already see the progress from a company that we onboarded 2 years ago to today. And once the knowledge is gone, we can still keep this knowledge for the next person that is going to be onboarded with the same tool. So it is usable. I try to make the example as simple as possible, but this is a concrete example of how we can use it, how we can already concretely use AI effectively, have it within our processes and make it work seamlessly for any types of companies. And this can work in every single different jobs, in specific sectors. We have this for inventories in the factories, for example, when they do live inventory within a factory. We have so many different examples that we can go deep dive into.
So the process you describe is interesting, and it's an incremental improvement on existing processes. What I'm interested in thinking about, if we pull this further into the future, is how do we rethink the process end-to-end from scratch if we were to use AI as a basis for everything, and especially in the context of HR, for example. One of the thoughts that comes to mind is the fact that currently the interviewing is, you're screening CVs, interviewing, etc. Eventually, what might be interesting is to look at performance on the job of people who have been interviewed with certain parameters and metrics for them being selected. Can you use, the outcome of annual evaluations, for example, as something that would train a model that would tell you that, okay, this is the criteria that made sense during the interviewing process, and what are the misses and what are the, the things that worked well. So both, in terms of your experience and maybe Florian as well.
100%, if I can just answer this quickly. Even more, I talked about being proactive earlier, but what if the candidate said that they can do a specific thing about, I don't know, an engineering thing, and then once the person is in the job, is in the current process of leading a project, and then the manager comes into it, and for example, the candidate once already taken in the company finds difficulties. We can have an AI go through every single document, every single thing that the person said, and go back to it and said, oh, but this is an example. You said that you worked on that case previously at that time with this company, and it has the same components. Maybe you can use that directly. And if the AI can be ongoing, once the, like we're right now working on proactive AI when we speak, that the AI process every single thing like as a real transcription, and go into all the documents and find all the documents that are related to what we're saying. We can do the same thing for a candidate with the process of HR that just said, talked about so many different projects, made a case study, for example, or even worked on a project in the beginning, and then 2 years later we can go back to it constantly and find, you know, the similar points that has been talked about.
Yeah, to get back on your question and point about the redefinition of processes, I think that in order to have this discussion, you need to have to build a mental model where you've got small processes and big processes, to keep it simple. A small process would be, I don't know, for a bank, building a report on the risk of a small business before having the report of the risk of the supplier and customer of this business before granting a loan. If you're of a pharma, building the Excel spreadsheet of the potential patient for a clinical trial. I don't know, on a manufacturing site, writing the security report at the end of the day based on the production log. Like that's one. You've got those small processes all over the business. And you've got big processes, like mega processes, such as, I don't know, onboarding customers, managing your production schedule, like all of this. And what I see today in the market is that I've seen my customers building agents for the small processes and actually doing the hard work of like finding the right data, putting it together, trying to test and validate it in situ with the data and so forth in order to push on the button, run, and like hope for the best. Like I've seen that happening dozens and dozens of times. And this agentic part starts to work. Starts to work as in like a year ago, I could not have said this sentence. Now I can. The mega process part, which is I actually redefine fully based on all of those new capabilities how the process could be run at the wall. I haven't really seen it for real completely. And I guess the big question in terms of AI success, as in like what do we define AI success and the value of AI, is that in some situations, you've got some productivity gain coming from the optimization of the small processes, but you don't have gains that are high enough in order to justify the organizational cost, at least the change cost of AI. And the big question for organization is like, when and how can they make this, or do they need to make this step changes of like redefining completely those big processes, which is way more disruptive? Or can they get actually enough benefit from AI, but just like this step-by-step adoption? And I think it's a question mark. It might not be like a black and white situation where there is like one way to do it. It could be probably a combination of both, but it's a big organizational question or a strategy question for most organizations, because disruption is never easy.
Maybe just a last question on this topic. You were mentioning earlier, local developers or citizen developers or local developers developing something very specific, versus the idea that we can develop generic models that are applicable at scale towards the throughout the organization. How do you see in practice with customers you work with the balance between both? Because that's a question that we ask ourselves: is decentralization versus centralization, and how do we go at scale?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Here my model is that you've got three things actually in the organization. You've got collaboration, which is like the people perspective, the integration, as in like what systems, and the governance part. And the issue is that you need to find a tight balance between all of this. If you've got only one system, it's way easier to solve for everything. But like in real life, you've got multiple databases and so forth. So like solving for integration is a big thing. If you can let people do anything and everything, but then you've got a big governance problem, which is that you can't control what is going in production, or like even practical access to data or information become an issue and so forth. So you, as an organization, you have to constantly put the cursor somewhere, like find this balance. you enable people to work enough, you give them way to innovate, but you put some governance and setup in place. That's a constant struggle. And I think to some extent, what we try to solve for our product is like help organization put the cursor where they want. Like I want to integrate everything, but also maximize at least the surface area of those choices. The way it works today is that I think that doing citizen development at scale for lots of data-related tasks or ML-related tasks even is becoming fairly mainstream, I think, in many businesses and many organizations. Like the generality could be that data scientist as defined by I transform the data to build a model, maybe no longer the job, because you could have lots of people doing Excel in the business today that already are doing it or could be doing it. So there is a shift there, and this democratization already happened to a large extent. And now it's more like, building complex agentic stuff, who is doing it? And here the population actually doing it is way more smaller cohorts or smaller numbers in most organizations. This part is still fairly central, starts with starting to some collaboration, but the way most of our customers approach it is that you give simple GPT, simple agents type of capabilities to everyone in the business, ideally. Like you can write your prompt and you've got some simple tools to make your case on something. The ID could work. And then the actual thing that would be an actual tool, an actual integration, something more substantial is done centrally, which is like a way to manage this innovation today. The goal at the end being to capture what are the small processes I talked about that could be developed in the business and see how you can accelerate the path to a governed movement in production of those things.
Considering this part, and actually what I got from discussions with other colleagues and even counterparts in other big organizations, the fact that we asked people from business to define what are the best use cases, don't you see in your ecosystems that these people from business define just processes where we ask AI to change their human way of doing things and not going further in this fine part of how AI is working and the real capabilities of AI to go further and ask to change all the process?
I think so. I think there is a bias, which is that if you ask the business how to do it, and especially if you ask the managers of the business how to do it, they might be biased toward like, that's the perspective of I think about how we should do it, and I know we should do this and this, and it's probably very biased toward a simple or an obvious solution that is actually not deriving value.
There is also the first of class bias. There is only involved people, the 3 to 15% of people you mentioned earlier, that are really involved and engaged in this way of thinking that will push for, and it's not really what's happening in all the...
Yeah, I think it's important to have the involvement of the business leadership in order to get buy-in and prioritization of the domains where AI disruption should happen or could happen. Because it's also because down the line, many of those efficiencies require change of the business model or change of the organization. So you can't just like do it out of like a geeky endeavor, like for real. But then I think that the paths to innovation are actually bifurcating then to some of the things happening very bottom up by enabling actually people in the business to discover it by themselves, but like playing with their own data, like almost like touching it and understanding what works versus not work in order to be innovative from that front. And then the other way around, having a way more creative way to rethink completely the business, because now that you've got tools and deep research or whatever else and agents, this and this and this is actually almost free. So the whole process makes no sense as it is today because it was making implicitly the assumption that those things are costly. And so you change completely the way you think about parallelization of everything and so forth, and it requires some creativity. Scaling that creativity, I think, is still hard today.
I always talk to different businesses about what they think, what would be next for them, what would be the next step, after giving them AI assistants, agents, whatever they have in mind right now, what's going to be next. And it reminds me of one thing that I saw in one of the documentaries about AIs back then, 150 years ago, when you would ask people how they would see the future of transportation, they would say faster horses, you know? And
That was the question from from Ford to his customers, actually.
So that was the biggest trick. And back then they wouldn't see a car or wheel because they didn't redefine the entire concept of going from a point A to a point B. And that's concretely what we're doing right now, is how can we go from this point A to point B and redefine the entire process between A and B. And right now, what I found is that most people, when they asked how can they use AI, they say go faster, make the process easier, shorter, and it's always the same terms. But when we go back to the beginning, the first question about the managers and the makers of AI, like how are the makers going to rethink the entire jobs and different businesses for tomorrow? Because in the next 25, 50 years, I think the giants that are going to be completely different. And I think also typologies of companies are going to change their entire strategy and also their entire not only processes, but the way they define productivity within their system. And what I mean is that you can do a lot more with a lot less. So how do you make business more viable in the long term with the amount of people that we have today and the amount of brains? How education is also going to improve and create the new systems that we're going to have, the new jobs that we're going to have, and probably the new subjects that we will have. Because if coding, an engineer is not going to be the core topic or the future of tomorrow, it's probably going to be about maybe psychology or other aspects that are still today not completely understandable by AI. Maybe one of the future jobs that we would have is mixing psychology with a current system that we have with, I don't know, coding or whatever, and make it and improve the entire area and the way people work together in a specific task. So yeah, that's a lot of thought process, and I think we can debate over this and try to redefine every single job all night, but there's, I think, many different areas.
The interesting part is that cars still have wheels. And whereas many people would also have dreamed about the future of transportation with cars without wheels. But we still have wheels because, like, wow, they are very practical and very dependable, and it works very well. And I guess the question for many entrepreneurs, at least for technologists, is like, okay, what is the equivalent of wheels, as in the thing that will actually still be using and look quite old in 15 to 20 years? And when you think about the adoption of AI for many, in particular, I would say core processes or critical systems, there is probably a little bit of that, which is where the debate is a bit muddied. As in, for instance, we have many customers like doing lots of forecasts. Energy forecast, financial forecast in every direction. I do believe that there will be lots of additional use of frontier models and large models in order to do those forecasts very differently and so forth, because you can add lots of incremental value. But I believe also that many companies will still use at the core of it very traditional techniques in order to have statistical proof of whether their forecast is correct or not, kind of, because they actually understand how it works. I do believe that in 20 years or 30 years, when a bank will grant a loan, it will still be using a mix of linear regression and decision tree. Because why take an additional level of risk in this kind of thing? Even if you might be using language models to parse every type of unstructured data to feed into your model, you will have like a core thing there. And I guess the interesting part when we are thinking about the design of intelligence in the organization is that you will probably have this type of like composite systems where you've got like those very modern large language models doing marvels, but at the core of it, all these still there to do some core processes that you still have to update, maintain, and that may be driving the core of your performance, and this even older stuff called humans, checking the box at a certain aspect of it, or managing exceptions or things that never happened before. And I think that designing all of this would be also a very interesting endeavor.
So designing machines and humans working together as part of the organization, I think that's an interesting concept. So if we talked a lot about workflows and processes, if we look at the interface between humans and machines, so like we were saying in the beginning, chat and text has been the primary interface that shifted the mindset. You're working a lot with voice through meetings. There's multimodality in new models with vision, etc., included in the mix. Also quantitative data, so what you were mentioning, that they might be the right tool for the right usage. So maybe not LLMs and large models for everything, but specialized models that are more frugal, that are more statistics based, or have some level of expertise to do the right kind of application. So how do you see the evolutions? You started with the voice through a tool that listens to meetings, and you're maybe also thinking about what are the different modalities that you can include in using AI for use cases.
I would say it's between two things. The first thing that any companies ask us, because we're working on voice and we work on sensitive conversations, it's security. So how can we innovate? Well, we still have to be compliant, to be regulated, and have so many different rules within Europe, within France, and within the organization by itself. So I think the first futuristic thing that I would see is that innovation cannot be slowed down by the security processes. And today we have to go through so many different compliance and regulatory systems. And I feel like even the government itself is still trying to find the right cursor of how much can we regulate and how much can we leave innovation to continue to foster. And our goal is really to create the most secure AI assistant that can be created and used by the organization with the most simplistic way of using it and the most embedded way for any user to use it frictionless, without even seeing that it's an extra tool or an extra agent or an extra assistant that is directly embedded in their entire process and the way they work. So this is the first thing about having a frictionless tool and still be compliant with the security and regulation. And the second thing that I see of what's next is what I talked about with proactivity. Whereas before we had a passive AI or system that can just we capture the notes, we capture the transcription, and then we can talk to the AI afterwards to find different information. Tomorrow, what we would see is that this assistant will anticipate my needs in real time. So when I would talk to, for example, at a board meeting, I talk to different business developers in my team, and I try to see, okay, what we have done wrong, what we have done right, and from what we have done wrong, at the same time that the business developer talks about it, I have the news from what happened lately with this company, I have the news from the different talks that we had with the customer. At the same time, I have the different data points from Salesforce as well of how it can perform overall and for this range. So what I'm seeing is that we will empower in real time our thinking process so that we can be not only more productive in general, but we can be more proactive in real time and also doing decisions. So that's what we're working on, and hopefully in the next years we can have augmented not only meetings but augmented exchange with different people using every single resources and every single data that exists on the market, whether it's external or internal, to find to be able to make the right decisions.
And maybe that information will appear in virtual reality glasses in front of you during the meeting, right?
Or maybe not. I think I already see that happening in terms of trends of UX, which what I could call almost anticipating interfaces or anticipating user experience. And I think it derives from the fact that in agentic use cases such as, I don't know, reporting in banking or in sales, use cases of agents where it's about like analyzing sales performance and evolution from 1 week to the other or 1 quarter to the other, you've got new applications being built, leveraging the fact that generating explanation for things and summarizing information is now free. And so before, our customers were building applications that were a lot about presenting information in a certain way and thinking about what information to put first versus not, and then drill down and so forth. But now, because out of this, it's almost as if you do all of the potential queries that could be relevant to the customers, you generate all of the explanation, you generate pyramids of summarization of everything, and it's almost as if you present things with too much information, where if something is interesting to the customer, they click on something and they get a bigger box and a bigger box and a bigger box, so that the managers can understand or look at the reports differently. So it's a different way to present information, which is happening, and happening for real now. I guess it's not yet I'm talking live to my Meta glasses and the thing is in real time generated to me magically. It's a bit more, let's say, pedantic in terms of actually building the thing and using different agentic system to actually do lots of SQL queries, which is always good. But it is indeed it's happening, and it's, I think, a new way to think about user experience.
Don't you see in this user experience a difference that I don't know if there is a word that exists in English, but in France there is difference between usager and utilisateur. Transport usager don't need to know how the subway is working to go from a point A to a point B. Don't you see in the future of usage of this AI, people that don't want to know how it works to get what they want from it? So, as you said, the new way of displaying information, people will take the easiest way to get to what they expect, and going through the confirmation bias and the way our brain works in this interaction, just following what the machine is saying.
But I guess here it's a difference between like B2B when you work type of usage and B2C usage. Meaning in B2C usage you want to optimize conversion, so get ChatGPT, I don't know, buy a screwdriver for you automatically because you ask for it. As a use case, I guess. Without thinking about it. Oh yeah, oh my god, yeah, I've got this new screwdriver. Yeah, I know why. And in B2B, you want actually to build your application the other way around, so that it's very hard for people to not ask themselves if it's actually what they think it is.
A tool is never used the way it was conceived.
So about the user experience, one way to think about it is, the software as a service model is you've got dynamic data, but you've got a static interface. And what you were describing as digging deeper and deeper is maybe a dynamic interface that is on demand for accessing dynamic data based on your needs. Is that something, sort of a concept that you are exploring, or how do you see the evolution from? Because for me, chat interfaces are like the console level, ground zero of interactions with machines, right? It's how we programmed computer, 30, 40 years ago. There are then, graphical user interfaces, things that improve from there. Where do you see the next step?
Yeah, I think that there were like multiple like in order to get things that you that are more dynamic. The step one back was having some form of no-code app so that you could build custom interface for a specific use case. Step one. Step two, like the chat, enable you to have like this freedom console level interface to actually freely build new things. The steps three, where we are today, where we see our customer going now, is mixing a little bit the two. And like for a given use case, you've got, let's say, an app on the left, a chatbot on the right, and they can interact with one another, like in life, and you get like a console with a custom build interface. I guess the step 4, as you, I think, explained, would be things that are way more fluid, as in like completely self-built interfaces that would build a new interface on demand, pair a specific use case with the agent defining how to actually present the information to the user. And I guess we are not there yet. And I don't know why the market is not there yet. I think it's not there yet because first there's a question of usage of like, in the enterprise, a practical question is if you present the information in a way that is not something that the user can understand, you actually create a risk. And that's a big issue because misinterpretation of in any business context is not something you want. And I think that's one topic. The second topic is that if we're honest, the self-generation of application and even great things such as Lovable are great at building fantastic website and interfaces and so forth, but maybe not with the level of the first shot is perfect that you would need in order to actually get this type of magic interfaces yet.
I just want to go back to what you said about the fact that we're not maybe there yet and we're not ready. I think there are two things as well, is that first there are people that are techno addicts, so they will try everything out. They would be very enthusiastic and they would, connect, create their own agents. And you have an entire population that we cater today, and we have to do change management for them to make sure that they understand how the technology is going to be integrated with their workflows, but also to reassure them, because second thing, they're scared. They're actually really scared of what's coming next. They're actually scared about their own job, the way things work. They think also things are going extremely fast. When we see the last innovation in that sense, the internet took almost a decade to be implemented and really used and being integrated in the system. Today, when we think about it, it's been 2-3 years, something like this, when it's just started to explode. So people are still trying to accommodate. So I think that's why we still have this delay and we're not there yet, because we still need to have this entire change management process within the organization and try to make people at the same level of understanding and of integrating before we go to the next step. So yeah, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I guess every organization has to take this into account before going faster.
Maybe that's a good segue for the last few minutes of the discussion around knowledge and expertise, things that are inside our minds, us as workers, as specialists, experts, professionals. How do we get that out of our heads so that we can leverage it, that we can capitalize it, we can make sense of it, share it with others, make others grow with it, but also use it for machines to collaborate with us. Florian, maybe?
Meaning sometimes the way I think about the journey enterprise are on today is that they're essentially trying to capture the knowledge that is indeed locked in the head of the people in order to put it somewhere where it can be automated. Well, it's so full when you say it this way. So, but if you think about it, currently in the enterprise, it took you 20 or 30 years to adapt the various system and business application and CRM and ERP, so that some aspect of the business logic, are fairly fixed and not very agile, but are somewhere and encoded somewhere. And everything left are actually the hard stuff, like all of the exception and nuances and that you need. And this know-how is essentially when you are an enterprise proud of its culture, or you want to operate as a business. And it has lots of value, and you hire people in a certain way to make sure they can actually accept the way the business works and so forth. And it's something you built over decades for many organizations. And if you really believe in the automation of the enterprise, you have to imagine that 5 or 10 years from now, there will be at least a portion of this knowledge, which is in prompts of agents or the equivalent of prompts of agents somewhere. and that will actually translate this way to operate in a digital form. As in, how should I answer to a customer in a certain context? Before, it's a cultural norm shared in the company through training, enablement, and so forth. Now, it's a prompt or a style that is somewhere in a system, and so forth for like hundreds of things. And the way or how you will manage that, or do this translation and understand what you actually do when you do this translation, is probably a key aspect for companies, not just to be efficient, as in like a bottom line efficiency, but more importantly, keeping their soul. Because if you actually build those systems without understanding where they are, you might start not understanding anymore what you are as a company, which is frightening.
And just to quickly finish on that, on the most simple basis, but I think it's very important, is to just talk to the users. Don't give just an app and tell them to log in and just find it out by themselves. I think it seems very basic, but trust me on this, the number of companies that were so happy that our team was really talking to them, onboarding them, taking them step by step through the process and reassuring them. I think for them it was change making, and I didn't see that in the beginning, but then little by little we found this as a very big difference in the way people actually take innovation into their own businesses and their own jobs and make it a bit better.
So on these wise words, maybe we can end the conversation. Maybe we'll take a question or two. I know that Florian, you have a hard stop in a few minutes, but let's take maybe a question from the audience here.
Are there some question in the audience, or else you can ask also in the...
Hello, many thanks for the talk. Going back to the citizen developer concept, definitely I'm lucky enough to be a developer, and vibe coding is a blast. Definitely you can go like 10x, 20x productivity, and that's a huge game changer for developers. And definitely, like the makers you were talking about, that I can see in every organization are starting to develop. Like they can output Python, they can output like with NI10 lovable like full systems. And at scale, I'm really wondering, maybe at NG or like for the customers you are discussing with, how do you prevent this from getting completely out of control? Because you have like two forces going against each other. One is you give productivity for the 15% of people who are actually managing the organization. And I'm actually, by the way, really wondering what are the other 85% doing. And on the other way, you have like IT professionals which are completely afraid of agents going everywhere and like messing with data, maybe on the big processes you are talking about.
So just to be able to not, like you said, to be able to keep control and not make things go around. Today we also, like I said before, we tried different types of application. We try to give them the freedom of trying to test out every single thing, but then at some point we have to also, even in our size of the company, we have to regulate and try to define specific processes that really work within our system and how we can embed them with our organization. And same for our clients, because we have clients, large corporations that really are extremely, how do you say this, reluctant with us working with other subcontractors or other providers, even if it's just to help us, code a specific part on our platform, or just to, help us with an API. They're going to be extremely thorough on this. So because we have to go through every single process for them to validate it, we have to really think through, is this really worth it? Is it really going to go through the entire process? So even for us as a small organization, we have a lot of regulation from our customers on the first base. So I don't know how DataIQ is working on that, but for us, we have a lot of boundaries. We cannot do anything we want. We would love to, but then once we find something that really works for us, we're going to go to the customers and say, okay, that's what we're using. Can you just validate it or not? But we cannot just change it every single month in that sense.
Yeah, without trying to answer on how vibe coding will be managed at scale, because I don't know. I think that an interesting sub-part of the question is how agents will be managed at scale, which is very theoretical today to some extent. But imagine a world where you've got as many agents in your business as employees. And many companies think about it this way, like at least on a theoretical perspective. And you've got very basic problems, which are, is it possible to have a list of all of the agents? How do you know that? Can you get the logs or a simple way to understand if they're working or not? How do you do observability and performance for them? How do you get basic governance to make sure that when someone is building something new, they're not just redoing the job of someone else, in fact? And even if you observe the agents, can you have a kill switch? You know, that's a Terminator. Like if you've got a big dashboard of all of your agents, if you don't have a kill switch, like as a chief information officer, you're like, oh my God, if I can't kill it, no use to observability. So you've got this type of questions, I think, today in the market, which are pretty fundamental, but not solved yet. Not solved yet because we are still in an ecosystem to be defined where it's almost as if, as of today, as in December 25, every vendor are building agents in their own direction. You've got some theoretical principle of interoperability or very basic protocols to do tools with one another. But what the actual architecture of agent at scale will look like is still to be defined by the market. And we are not at the early ages of the internet where the wise people were building DNS, getting all together in a room in order to define the protocols of the future that would sustain 30, 40, 50 years of innovation. You've got like every big companies on earth trying to do their own thing. And so it's a very different situation, which is very interesting because I'm not sure yet how it will unfold.
I think at the end of the day, it's about, like you mentioned, soul, but it's about culture and mindset. And I think the AI transformation is really a transformation of people and processes rather than a technological transformation as such. So thank you very much for this amazing conversation. For those of you who are here, we have a networking cocktail at the end of the day, like usual, and see you next year for more Powered by AI. Thank you very much.